This is Our View, proudly brought to you by members of the Washington Federation of State Employees, the people who make Washington work. Steel fabrication outsourced to countries like China has become a serious drain on the U.S. taxpayer. Construction companies get contracts for public projects, such as bridges, then for extra profit get the steel and its fabrication done in China. It's taxpayer dollars then funding jobs in China. In the case of the new Oakland Bay Bridge in California, that's 3,000 jobs we are paying for. It not only affects local companies, but also our communities.
Well, it affects all companies, not just Garco Construction. There's lots of fabricators in the state of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California that's very capable of fabricating all the structural steel that's needed in the West Side. As far as how it affects our employees, that takes a lot of work away from our American workers. Taxes are not being paid by our workers that could be fabricating the steel. Well, it takes a lot of workforce away from Spokane, so the city can't grow. Again, the people don't pay taxes, so there's no money going back into the community to fix our infrastructures or, pay for our government needs and things. I think America should buy all America. It should all be fabricated in America. It should all be sold in America.
At a recent appearance before the Labor History Association, the head of the Labor and Work-Life program at Harvard Law School reminded us what a union is all about. It's a lot more, or should be a lot more, than just an organization that bargains wages. It's the basis for our very democracy.
It's a very different world. Man, the Wobblies would be so excited about this. This is like, can you imagine? What an opportunity. So that's why we need to start having adult conversations about unions, collective bargaining, government and public sector. It means actually going to first principles. There's no magic here. It means talking about unions, but talking about unions as real live organizations, not as institutions. Organizations for winning rights and exercising rights. I got a driver's license, but without a car, I'm not going anywhere. So the car is the vehicle that allows me to exercise the right that, that my license gives me. So, for a union, it's not just having rights, it's actually exercising them. It's like having a gym membership and never going to the gym. You ain't gonna lose weight by just having the membership. You actually have to do something. And similarly, unions are about exercising rights. We're schools for democracy where workers learn that they have a right to participate in decisions that affect them, and that we provide an aggregate voice. We actually help employers, an aggregate voice instead of individual voices. Engineers say one of the neat things that unions do is they provide a feedback loop. Any system, human or mechanical, needs to have a feedback loop from the front line. A system without a feedback loop is called stupid. So you either have stupid systems or you have ones with feedback loop. That's why unions are the key institution for promoting democracy.
Major manufacturing facilities, such as auto plants, close down and the effects can devastate the entire community. This has turned many once viable cities into ghost towns, Flint, Michigan, just to name one. This isn't limited to the United States. French auto workers face a similar fate in a plant partially owned by General Motors. Here's a report from Benjamin Marcus.
In France, the brand Peugeot and Citroën cars are part of the PSA group, that is also part of General Motors up to 7%. Last July, Philippe Varin, the CEO of PSA, announced the closing of the Aulnay car factory located in the northern suburbs of Paris. It was built in 1973. Over 8,000 people will be laid off by 2014. The main objective of PSA is to reduce the cost of workforce in factories. By doing so, PSA expects to push their margins. On the 8,000 people that are planned to be laid off, 1,500 people will be transferred to other factories. Many positions will not be renewed, but massive layoffs will be applied. Philippe Varin says that these measures are necessary for the group. They want to transfer over 1,500 employees from here to another factory in Poissy. But that factory is already full and has too many workers. It's bogus. They're just trying to put us to sleep. They just want to shut down the factory and we'll all be unemployed. If they can make as many cars with fewer workers in factories, they will do it. It will boost up their profits and their stock. They say workforce is very expensive in France. Then, how come Toyota opens up its factories in France? Why not move to Eastern Europe? 20 years ago, the cost of workforce was 16% of the value of a car. Now, it's down to 7%. We are cheaper than we were 20 years ago. In this massive meeting in front of the Aulnay factory, even Renault workers came over to show their support. We are not just here by solidarity for our brothers, but also because we are all concerned by this problem, since this is a policy that's applied to all the auto industry. Or they shut down the factories and lay off workers, or they say that they have to restructure their company by asking their personnel to reorganize their work. Like with us, Renault says that if we want to keep our jobs, we will have to give up certain rights, lower salaries, and no union rights. In France, Peugeot and Citroën are part of the PSA group. When Mr. Varin announces that he was planning to close down the Aulnay factory, he said Renault was not planning to shut down any factory. But if other factories were planning to shut down, he may reconsider. So, we are maybe looking at the same situation as the US in 2009, when GM shut down over 15 factories. Since GM and PSA work together, they have the same market. They have to reduce the cost of production by making their workforce compete. So, in the end, or GM workers will suffer, or PSA workers will suffer.
Je vais vous demander si vous êtes d'accord pour mener cette lutte tous ensemble jusqu'au bout. Je rencontrerai les personnes de Aulnay-sous-Bois avant votre élection. Donc, Hollande égale menteur. Faites le diffuseur, on n'a pas peur. Hein. C'est un menteur, il a dit que les syndicats, regardez comment il fuit. La parole.
On the political side, the mayor of Aulnay accuses the previous administration for not having announced this earlier and not taking any measures to prevent this. In our own town, we are looking at hundreds of families that will be affected by this. 6 hours after the official announcement that the factory was going to shut down, the stock for PSA and GM grew over 5 points. Benjamin Marcus for Our View, Paris, France.
This month's Labor History traces some of our public collective bargaining rights to the community of Bremerton.
What did public employees do before the right to collective bargaining was legislated? Well, in one of our little towns, Bremerton, Washington, they bargained for a contract and had one. That was at least a decade before the even weak law covering something called professional negotiations. How did that happen, I wonder? I'm not sure, but recently in my role as a gatherer of union archives, I was given a box of materials from a late old friend named Florence Justin. Florence taught in Bremerton in the 1940s to the 1960s. She helped negotiate a contract for teachers there. Now, maybe it was just because her husband was a honcho in the machinist union that existed in the Bremerton shipyards. She was goaded into it by her hubby. No, I don't think so. Or maybe it was because she didn't think she needed a law to wave in front of the school board that told them it was okay to bargain with teachers. It's okay to do the right thing even if the law doesn't say you can. In the late 1960s, I was elected president of the State American Federation of Teachers. We had just chartered a local at the New Seattle Community College, Local 1789. A good revolutionary year, please note. In 1969, having been elected to represent the Seattle Community College faculty, Local 1789, under the leadership of an ex-Boeing professional engineer named John Barton and a former Seattle School District shop teacher named Lloyd Frizzell, a first contract was negotiated, helped along a little by a one-day strike. Having shown that they could do it, strike that is, a reasonably friendly board of trustees reached agreement for the first contract. The only ironic and funny twist was that since there was no law saying teachers could negotiate a contract, the word agreement was substituted and all was peaceful for the duration. I guess there are always practical solutions to non-problems, eh? You don't need a law to be practical. Now, in some areas, that may make me an anarchist, but I always agreed with the late folk singer and storyteller Utah Phillips when he said, "An anarchist is a fellow who doesn't need a cop to tell him what's the right thing to do."
This has been Our View, brought to you by the members of the Washington Federation of State Employees. We remind you, when you accept a paycheck for your hard work, you don't give up your rights. Thank you for watching.